All right, it's 5:15, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, Matt. It's 5:15, so let's get started. This is the September 16, 2025 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Zoning. Present here today are Hal Morrison, Chappie McKay, Allison Grass, John Bennett, Robin Richards, your chair, Jeff Tibbles. Present from the planning staff are Robert Summerfield and Matt Slagle. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak please identify yourself for the record. We will conduct this meeting in the usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and the recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The Board of Zoning Appeals usually, but not always, approves uncontested applications. For all applications, the board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application, or if there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested, and we hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals Zoning has the authority to do three things. Number one, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Number two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And number three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. By our city's ordinance, I'm required to swear you in to tell the truth if you intend to speak. So if you do intend to speak, please raise your right hand. If you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you'll signify by saying, "I do." Thank you. We don't have any deferrals that I know of, at least, on the agenda. And so we'll go right into it. The agenda for September 16, 2025. A is the review of minutes and deferred applications from previously advertised BZA-Z agendas. Number one is review of minutes of the September 2, 2025 meeting. I'm informed we do have a quorum of those who attended. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Mr. Morrison moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennett seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. We have two who have abstained, Ms. Grass and Ms. Richards, who were not present. Ms. Grass was present. We have five. So the motion is approved 5-0 with one abstention. All right, the next item on the agenda is A2, 80 Ashley Avenue, Charleston Village.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, Mr. McKay and,
I wasn't there.
yes.
Okay, I see. I took the signal wrong there.
My mistake.
I thought you were trying to second the motion, but that's okay. So Mr. McKay has abstained. And so the minutes are approved by a 4-0 vote with Mr. McKay and Ms. Richards abstaining. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is A2, 80 Ashley Avenue, Charleston Village, Council District 8, DMS number 457-03-04-068, zoned STR, requesting special exceptions under section 54-110F to vertically extend a non-conforming rear setback of 0 feet, 25 feet are required, and a non-conforming north side setback of 0 feet, 6 feet are required for a second floor office. The owner is 80 Ashley LLC. The applicant is Capers G. Barr III. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so again, my apologies for our error last time in noticing this, that it did have to get deferred and come back. But has properly been noticed, both setback special exceptions have been legally listed in the newspaper, and so this application can be acted on this evening. This property is at the corner of Ashley Avenue and Wentworth Street. Previously heard a use variance request for this site to allow it to serve as an office. Previously, it's been requested to serve, I think, as a cafe. That did not go over as well with the community. However, the use permit was the use variance, I'm sorry, the use variance to allow this to serve as an office location in an STR, which is a single family residential zone, did have favorable support. So with that, at the time of that application, the applicant's representative did also provide renderings that were showing not just that they were going to reuse the property, but in revitalizing it and renovating it, that they were going to propose this additional element on the second story to provide this space that they need really for the owners. They have, I believe it's a design business and construction business, that they would be running out of, doing the office elements and design showcasing out of this location. So with that, the proposal would be to add a second story element because of the existing 0 lot lines. They do need the special exception to expand that vertically. And so that is what they are requesting today. You can kind of see again, this building sits right on those property lines. It is a historic building. As I mentioned here, is the relevant history from recent cases that we've had related to this site. And these are special exceptions to extend those non-conforming setbacks with this modest second story addition, and staff is recommending approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Summerfield. Do we have anybody here who is opposed to the application for 80 Ashley Avenue? Anyone opposed? Seeing no one opposed, Mr. Barr, anything you'd like to present, or? Good.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would comment on this. The apology is owed from me, not from Mr. Summerfield, because I'm the one who missed applying for the north 0 lot line when I applied for the east 0 lot line, but we would encourage the board to grant the approval. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Does anybody have any questions for the city or for the app?
I'll make a motion for approval.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Second. Mr. Morrison seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes and the special exception is granted for 80 Emsley Avenue.
Thank you, lady.
All right, the next item on our agenda. A3, 1705 Hollydale Court, Johns Island, Council District 3. TMS number 313-00-00-326, zoned GB. Requesting a variance from section 54-404C to allow an off-site sign. The owner is TBLB LLC, James Baker. The applicant is Linda Heft, Loretano Sign Company. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so again, this is the second one that was deferred due to an error on our part with the noticing. We had noticed the applicant's address and not the property where the sign would be, that would actually be where the variance would be located. So again, our apologies for that, and but everything is in order for this one. You'll see a slight difference on the slide. It says an off-premises sign. I guess our code actually calls it an off-premises sign, not an off-site sign, but the notice is still accurate as far as that goes. So this is for the request would be to allow the sign to occupy the corner on this lot that fronts on Maybank Highway at the corner of Hollydale Court and Maybank. This sign would provide identification and it has traditionally had a sign of similar purpose, although not necessarily with much by the way of actual advertising. But to advertise the businesses and commercial activity that would be proposed within the parcels along Hollydale Court. Here you can see kind of what the eventual build out site plan has the likelihood of looking. It is important to note this site plan is important because staff does have one recommended condition. We do have two buildings that would be on a site that would be accessible from Hollydale Court, but technically have some frontage on Maybank Highway themselves. So we have a condition that we'd like to include just relative to additional freestanding or monument signs related to that. Otherwise, this sign would provide business information for those properties that are along Hollydale Court that you wouldn't necessarily recognize. Normally you would see this in a commercial subdivision where all the properties were, they were parceled out, but it was really master site plan. And you would have a consolidated monument sign at the entryway to the subdivision. This is a little different just because the properties are individual properties off of a public right of way. But in essence, it really does operate in many ways back here as if it were a commercial subdivision, if you can see here. So with that, staff and some more images they put together of how that would look at future build out. Here would be what a representation of the sign. And so again, just the most recent history is just that previous item that was deferred. So staff is recommending approval of this variance with and if approved condition, approval of this off-premises sign shall be limited to a monument sign used for identifying, advertising, or directing the public to businesses or commercial activity located on property accessible from Hollydale Court, which have no on-premise monument or freestanding signage present along Maybank Highway. So very long sentence. What it means is if the property that's shown with the buildings that would have frontage on Maybank, they provide their own monument sign that they might otherwise be entitled to, they would not be advertising on this sign. This would only be for signs for businesses that access off of Hollydale Court that don't otherwise have advertisement or signage presence on Maybank Highway.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do you have anybody who is opposed to the application? for 1705 Hollydale Court? All right, seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant present? All right, ma'am, anything you'd like to say to the board?
No,
Okay,
if they have questions, I'll be happy.
thank you. Do we have any questions for the city or for the applicant?
My only question, Robert, is so then the two buildings that have frontage on Maybank Highway would have their own signs.
They potentially could have their own signs. If they had their own signs, then they would not also be able to have their logo, their signage recognition on the monument sign per the condition.
Okay, but if they didn't have their own signs, would they,
Correct,
then
because
they
they're,
couldn't?
yes, because they're not accessed from Maybank. Because you couldn't have a curb cut there, so they are accessed off of Hollydale Court.
So they can have one or the other,
They could have one or the other, but not both.
and that's what your condition.
That would be what my condition is trying to make sure is clear. Or attempts to make sure is clear. That would not preclude them, I guess I want to say, that would not preclude them from having a wall sign. So if they have a sign on the building, a window or a wall sign, that would not stop them from being on the monument sign. It's just they wouldn't be able to have two monument signs, like one on their property and then be on the monument sign for the overall shopping, commercial district, whatever you want to call
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any further questions or any discussion?
Move for approval with conditions.
All right, Ms. Grass moves for approval with the condition that the approval of this off-premises sign shall be limited to a monument sign used for identifying, advertising, or directing the public to businesses or commercial activity located on property accessible from Hollydale Court, which have no on-premises monument or freestanding signage present along Maybank Highway. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Bennett seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The variance is approved with the condition, which we'll put in the record as well.
Great.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, the next item on our agenda, we're in B, new applications. Number 1, 828 Fifth Avenue, Maryville, Asheville, Council District 9, TMS number 418-11-00-155, zoned SR2. Requesting a special exception under section 54-501 to build a single-family residence on a lot of insufficient size. 3,869 square feet are existing, 6,000 feet are required. Square feet are required. The owner is Tim Backman. The applicant is William Smith. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this property is on Fifth Avenue, backs up to the bikeway. Okay. I always confuse bikeway and greenway. So backs up to the bikeway, just a little before you would get to Sycamore Avenue. And just mid-block from Main Street in the Ashleyville, Maryville area of our community. You can see here in the aerial, it is because of the railroad acquisition of property when the railroad went through this area. You can see it has this odd trapezoidal shape. Instead of our normal rectangular shape that you see elsewhere on the block there. So this is a request to allow for a lot of insufficient size. This property has dealt with a crayon tree issue that they did have on the site. You can see that there were I think 3 relatively large trees. They've been working with our site design team on that, and they resolved that issue. So this item can come forward for BZA-Z issue for building a home on a lot of insufficient size. The home that they're proposing to build, while they're showing a kind of a picture here, you know, it fits within all of the setback requirements. It would have on-site parking. And so its only deficiency exists with the lot itself, being a lot of insufficient size, given the irregular shape that it has as a result of the railroad acquisition of the property for what is now the bikeway. Again, as normal with a special exception for a lot of insufficient size, particularly one that's not hamstrung by any additional variance requests. This is a single family lot. It was platted as a single family lot in this community. We would like to see housing, and so staff is recommending for approval of this special exception.
All right, thank you, Robert. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in opposition to the application for 828 Fifth Avenue? If you're here in opposition, okay, ma'am, I see you. So we'll hear from the owner or applicant. Yes, sir.
How y'all doing? You were just looking to build a house there.
Would you please state your name
Okay,
and
William
address?
Smith, applicant, not the owner. Looking to build a house here, as you guys can see. With the site plan, not asking for anything besides a special exception, no variances. Obviously, worked through that issue with the tree, with the city's site team. I met with Ms. Higgins out there, you know, walked her through the plan, showed her everything. She seemed as, you know, happy with it as she could be, of course. And, you know, just happy to get another house in there if possible and continue to work alongside the Maryville and Ashleyville community and Ms. Higgins to create a quality product and, you know, keep the neighborhood in as much a respectful manner as we can. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of the application? All right, seeing no one else in favor of the application, we'll hear from the party opposed.
Oh, good evening. I'm Marcia Higgins, president of the Maryville Ashleyville Neighborhood Association. As Mr. Smith said, we met at the property on September the 11th, and we reviewed the property. We're very pleased that there will be 2 parking spaces there, which is much needed in that area. And also, my concern is about this, there's a discrepancy. On the application, on the agenda, it says request for a special exception. However, in the design of the property, it does show that there is a variance that's needed on the left side of the property. And that's not indicated on the agenda because a variance will be required. Mr. Smith mentioned that when we reviewed the property, that there would be a variance required on that left side.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's the issue of concern that should have really been placed on the agenda and considered, because there is a variance that's required in order to build this house. My other question is, with the variance, I wasn't sure, there's a house there and there's a vacant lot there on the other side. Is that variance on the side where the vacant lot is or where the house is? I asked that question because that house is already very close to the building that's next to it on the right-hand side. And it would really be kind of squeezing that house in. So if the variance is considered and approved, that would be on the side where the vacant lot is. My understanding is that vacant property belongs to the city. And matter of fact, the Charleston Parks Conservancy is in the process of building a garden forest there. So nothing else should be built on that property that's on the right side of the house. So if the variance is granted, I would ask that it be placed on the side where the vacant lot is, not on the side where the house is located. That's my only.
Thank you very much.
Everything else, we're very pleased with it, and very pleased with Mr. Smith, working with the community, on his application and on the design. It says the house will be 28.1 feet tall in height. We certainly hope that he would stick to that, because, it's a small lot, yes, and they need to go up. But we hope that he would go up no higher than what he's requesting, the 28.1 feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. All right, Mr. Smith, come on up and tell us about this variance issue.
Yeah, so that's a misunderstanding, I suppose. I originally thought I would need a front variance, but then was later told, so she has a set of plans in her hand that I gave her. And on the site plan, it says, front variance is like 9'8", just rough numbers. But later found out that I don't need a front variance because I'm already allowed to go to where the house to the right is. So like, instead of needing a variance, I can just match where the house to the right is. So originally I thought because it's a 25-foot setback, I would need like a 9'8" variance. Later I was told by planning that I did not need a variance. So I just removed that from the site plan. So I no longer need a variance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Just clear that up.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Summerfield, does the city agree that there's no variance required for this?
Correct. Yeah, we had him update the plans to this version. As indicated, there was an earlier version that was noting a potential variance. But our code provides an exception so that you don't have, so that, again, trying to create context that you can encroach, provided that you're in line with the neighboring property to adjacent to you. So no variance is required for this.
All right, any further discussion or any other questions? All right, no further questions or discussion. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Approval.
Mr. Morrison moves to approve. Is there a second? Mr. McKay has seconded the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the special exception for 828 Fifth Avenue is granted. Thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda, B2, 172 President Street, West Side, Council District 6, TMS number 460-07-04-056, zoned GB, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to exceed allowable lot occupancy, 57% proposed, 50% allowed, to build a single-family residence. The owner is JT Properties LLC. The applicant is First Choice Designs LLC. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so 172 President Street is on what almost feels like a little bit of an island here at President and Bogart Street. I'm on a block that's immediately adjacent to Septima Clark Parkway. It's right across the street from, I cannot remember the church name off the top of my head, but I'm sure somebody knows. Maybe. It is the Holy City for a reason, because we do have a lot of churches. At any rate, so it is on this vacant lot that is in this kind of island, if you would, of a block here, just north of the Septima Clark Parkway. You can see it there. This site has previously had an approval for a mixed-use building. That's important to note because it's going to cause a slight discrepancy, if you would, as to the difference between what is being requested today and what has previously been approved. In fact, if you look at the here on the application, the applicant has kind of gotten to that point. Our code makes a lot of allowances for a mixed-use infill development because of our urban nature. It does not make those same allowances when you're doing a single-family home. Specifically in this case, because this is a GB property. So GB, if you do a straight residential proposal, you have to meet regular single-family detached residential standards. So if you're doing a mixed-use project or a commercial project on GB, which is what GB is really truly meant for, then you have a lot of allowances to lot coverage, setbacks, things like that. But if in GB, which we do allow for single-family detached development, if you're going to do that, you have to meet a more residential standard similar to other single-family detached structures in the area. That's important because the applicant is proposing to utilize a similar, if not exactly the same footprint for their proposed single-family residential dwelling unit as what the previous proposal, which would have had this be a mixed-use building with a, I think it had a commercial piece and then a residential piece as a part of that under the original item that was proposed here. So you can see the floor layout. Again, nothing is overly, I would say overly ambitious necessarily in their design in terms of what they're requesting as a single family home. Again, however, this is a GB zoned lot, which means that it has to conform to certain single family detached residential standards, which the original building profile did not, and reusing that essentially that profile with an update to the floor plans to allow it to just be a single family residence just unfortunately does not comply. They did, this property did in 2020 go through site design and to get approval to remove some trees that had been on the site. So that's some relevant history. Again, this is a denial because the lot can still be used. It can still be used for a building of this size. But the program has to be consistent with what the kind of the direction of the zoning is. And when you do the single family residence in the zoning, the code very specifically calls for it to then be developed to a more single family detached dwelling standard. So for that reason, staff is recommending denial.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anyone here who is opposed to the application for 172 Preston Street? Anybody opposed? All right, seeing no one opposed, do we have the owner or applicant present? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Mindy Thompson. I'm with First Choice Designs, the applicant and the owners back there also. We were proposing this because you said it exactly. We were just going back in with the size that was previously approved, knowing that it was a single family residence. But that being said, I'm not sure, and I was trying to look, but it was hard to see on the site plan when we were doing the lot coverage percentage, if that included gravel on that bottom floor to like just do that, not the bottom floor, I should say like the park under area being all gravel, because I know that's classified as a different lot coverage than just concrete. It'd be like at what, 40%?
Lot coverage is going to be everything under a roof. So
don't do it different, so it doesn't matter. If it's gravel or not.
No. So it'd be whatever, wherever that roof line is, basically the shadow down is the lot coverage.
Okay. Well, with that being said, we would like you guys to look at it. It's not a terrible, it's a good design. It's a park under. There's plenty of room for water to run off with that. We've got the vents and the doors on the bottom floor so that we're not worried about water retention on the site with the design that we have.
Thank you. Anybody else wishes to speak in support of the application? Do we have any questions or discussion?
I'm a little bit curious, what kinds of requirements for single family standalone residence would this building not meet, this proposal not meet?
So the only standard right now that it's not meeting is the lot coverage. So it's providing the necessary parking. Because it is GB, I believe we have it's otherwise compliant with the other standards. It's just, again, in a single family detached structure, 50% is the lot coverage requirement.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's GB, so it's not one of the other zones where that lot coverage is even less for a single family detached. But yeah, so to create a yard space and open area, consistent with the idea that you're not using the full lot for the habitable structure, essentially, or structures. That's the requirement that it's presently not meeting.
Sir, did you want to say something? Come on up, sir. Please state your name
Tim Blackman,
and address for the record, please.
what's that?
Your address. Where do
My
you live?
address?
Yes, sir.
200 River Landing Drive, Daniel Island.
Thank you.
We did a Zoom, I think maybe a year ago. And there was issues with doing a commercial. We wanted to do a commercial, then the same footprint with the apartment above. And we were told that things have changed and that we'd have to go in front of you guys again. And then we mentioned about if we put a single family there, if we would have to do anything, and everybody was happy with that. And if we reduce it down to the 50%, is that gonna pass?
Yeah, well, you would not need a variance. to
Okay.
Reduce it down. You would actually be in compliance with the zoning code. So that's, I think, what the city is
So I mean,
guiding you to do.
the whole little 7% is what's making this not go through,
Yes, sir.
okay? I mean, we've cleaned that lot up 100 times and we always gets garbage on it and, you know, having a house there and living and it improves the city and now we gotta go through and change all the plans again, more money and.
Yeah.
But we were told in the beginning that a single family was much better, otherwise we would have just stayed with the way it was.
Right, I understand. And I encourage you and all people who do business and development in the city, talk with the city staff before you draw up your plans so that you can be sure you know the regulations.
We did, and they said, 7%, they usually don't, that goes right through and we can't do it here at our counter, but you know, that should be no big deal. So we went ahead and had it drawn up and here we are. But we'll certainly get it changed and that's it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, any further discussion, questions, ready to vote, motion?
Move to deny the application.
Okay, Mr. Bennett's moved to deny the application for the variance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. McKay seconds the motion. All in favor of the motion to deny the application, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we've got one opposed, two opposed. But the motion passes and therefore the variance is denied by a vote of 4-2.
Chairman, just to confirm, that was Mr. Morris and Ms.
Ms.
Glass.
Morrison and Ms. Glass voted to, excuse me, Ms. Grass voted to, voted no on the motion to deny. And so the motion to deny the variance passes 4-2.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda. B3, 1850 Central Park Road, James Island, Council District 11. EMS number 340-03-00-012, zoned SR1, requesting a variance from section 54-824 to create a new lot with 0 feet of lot frontage, 50 feet are required. The owner applicant is Terry Thomas. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this property is located here on Central Park Road. As you can see, this is an area where, other than some subdivisions that have gone in, is a very eclectic mix of property sizes, shapes, configurations. And so the applicant is requesting to subdivide her lot so that she can build a second home on it, which would be consistent with the zoning in all respects, other than she cannot provide, in order to, it's not possible to provide the necessary street frontage for the code that is dedicated to that lot as a part of the mapping action. That said, it is possible to do it through an easement process, and I'll show you the map of how that's being proposed. So here in the aerial, you can see the lot. She has her home on towards the front of it. There's a large backyard area that is currently vacant, and then again, as I mentioned, there's kind of an eclectic mix of how properties have been subdivided in this area. There actually is another home further back. It's on a separate flag lot that does have frontage, very small, but flag lot frontage on Central Park. In essence, this is very similar to what's being proposed, just kind of on the reverse side, if you would. So here you can see is a map of the proposed essentially subdivision where there will be an easement on the what would be the east side of the property. Yeah, east side of the property to provide driveway access to this new lot that would be proposed. The applicant is actually going to build her home here and then make the front home available as a, I believe she's currently thinking tenant, but she would obviously, with the approval to subdivide, be able to sell that lot independent. So obviously with that plan, it's in her best interest to make sure that this easement is fully vetted and that access remains in perpetuity, which is what she's proposing to do. She provided some photos so you can kind of just see how much land is really available. That right now, because it's all part of that one lot, really is not accessible for anything other than, and apparently my internet connection is unstable, so you are not seeing the pictures that I have navigated to. All right, real quick, I'm going to stop sharing and then try to reshare. Oh, wait, let me see. Maybe the internet caught up to me. Almost. Oh, come on, you can do it. All right. So apparently it's oh, there we go. Now we're synced. So at any rate, under the current zoning as one lot, there really isn't too much she can do other than she could maybe have an accessory dwelling unit, but again, that's not the goal. She can continue to use it as just acreage, but again, not put it to what might otherwise be thought of as productive use. She did receive letters of support from her immediate neighbors. Those are available for you both in the packet, and then you can actually see the letters here. And there is no other relevant case history. Again, this isn't an odd situation with the way the lot configurations are out there. This is a arguably large lot, and oftentimes we have people asking to do the bigger things than the lot can support. this lot can support two independent single-family residences. With the easement, we believe that that will provide the access necessary in this case to be able to subdivide this property and provide what will amount to a reasonable addition to this area and neighborhood with an additional single-family residential home. So with that, staff is recommending for approval of this variance.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody in opposition to the application for 1850 Central Park Road? I'd say no one in opposition. Do we have the owner or applicant here? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Terry Thomas. I am the owner at 1850 Central Park Road. I've lived in Charleston for about 14 years, almost exclusively at 1850 Central Park Road. When I bought this property, my goal was to always build my dream home on the lot behind the existing house. If the variance is approved, I will be able to preserve the aesthetic and historic charm of the existing house, which was built in 1937, which is my plan, but also build my dream home behind it and kind of have the best of both worlds, so to speak. So I do thank you for your time and consideration of it. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
All right, thank you, Ms. Thomas. Anybody have any questions? No. All right, Ms. Grass moves to approve. Is there a second? Ms. Richards seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the variance for 1850 Central Park Road is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask for just a technical moment so that I can stop sharing and reload and see if that will help?
Yeah.
I have 4 others, so. It's true. Okay. Actually, it's just going to remain unstable. All right, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. We may have a little bit of a slow thing, but we just have a couple more items, so hopefully.
All right, we'll try to power through here.
Yeah.
All right, the next item on our agenda, B, new applications, number 4, 56 Bull Street, Charleston Village, Council District 8, TMS number 457-03-02-031, zoned DR1F, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to construct a rear addition bedroom suite with a 10-foot 8-inch rear setback, 25 feet are required. The owner is Kevin Mills. The applicant is Julia F. Martin Architects. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this is 56 Bull Street. Okay, now come. So this is at the corner of Bull Street and Smith Street, or next to the corner of that, if you would. Here you can see it on the aerial. The area that we're looking at is this would be for an addition to the rear of the house where there is an existing addition to the historic home that would intrude into this rear setback area that hopefully you can see my little cursor moving over there. And then the applicant has provided a otherwise zoning compliant alternative that they would pursue in the absence of the variance for the addition because the zoning would allow them an accessory structure in this rear area that would be potentially much closer to the property lines than the requested variance. The applicants have provided a fair amount of information here relative to the existing home. In their packet, they do talk about the potential significance of the home because it is on the national registry. This property is commonly referred to as the Denmark Vesey House. Although I do think that from what I've read, there's some question about that, but it is still on the National Registry. It is still a freedman's cottage at its core. So hopefully you can see some photos of the property. They provided some Sanborn maps as well as some an overlay, if you would, of the existing property onto one of those older Sanborn maps. Then they have provided a site plan that shows the existing site with floor plan demonstrating where setback lines are specific to the rear property. So if you're looking at the plan that is on the right side of the screen, you will see the proposal that is the subject of this variance. So in order to do the proposed addition to the current rear addition to this home, to put in a new bedroom with a new bathroom that will encroach into the 25-foot rear setback. And so that is the variance that is before you today. Alternatively, they are trying to demonstrate that there is another option that they do have, which is to do, as I mentioned, an accessory structure in the rear. So they could make that bedroom and bathroom as kind of a detached element to the property. They can do that as a matter of right because this is a historic property and this addition would be visible from the right-of-way, if not from Bull Street, certainly from Smith Street. You can see kind of into this backyard from the right-of-way on Smith Street. And vegetation doesn't count in terms of what can be visible for purposes of design review purview from the Board of Architectural Review. It's important to note that the accessory structure that could be built in the rear is a zoning right. So that is possible. Where the Board of Architectural Review comes in is ensuring that whatever they end up doing with that accessory structure is sensitive and subordinate to the historic elements of the property. So given the current height district and everything else, as long as the back building essentially is subordinate, meaning essentially smaller in scale or in height, the Board of Architectural Review is in no way going to be able to prevent this accessory structure from going in. Additionally, as the applicants have included in the packet, because this is a detached structure, completely new versus an addition, the rules with regard to elevating the structure to protect it from a flood event are different than they are for an attached addition to the existing structure. So there are some elements of that at play that do make the accessory structure option less, in my personal opinion as a planner, less user-friendly for both the potential property owner user, but also for the neighboring properties as well. They've included these elevation samples so that the board can look at what the elevation impact is of doing the accessory structure versus doing the addition, which is again the subject of the variance today, so that you can kind of see how all that interplays. Obviously, this is not a new application to this board. There has been some recent history with regard to this property. This past June, this variance was before the board It was approved. It was not a unanimous decision, but it was approved by the board to approve the variance. That was appealed and requested for reconsideration by the neighbor who believed that there was information missing from the record during that review. That request for reconsideration was submitted within the time frame that is prescribed by code. So a hearing on that reconsideration was held last month. And in that hearing, the board did grant reconsideration, which results in this new hearing that we are here today. Staff's recommendation previously was for approval on this matter. Again, from our discussion, it felt like the addition, while requiring a variance, was less intrusive than the otherwise code compliant option that exists on this property for the separate accessory structure. There is a letter of support in your packet for the variance that came through via public comment from the neighbor on Smith Street, Mr. Okay, you did ask me about names. Raj, R-O-G-G-E. Rogi. Ooh, I really, this is also why I didn't become a school teacher, because every year having to memorize 30 new names would have just, that would have been the death of me. At any rate, so in his letter, he's pretty clear that, like, of the options, he thought the variance was the least intrusive. When this originally came before the board, staff was had a similar position that and our recommendation was for the variance. However, subsequent to that initial recommendation, at that point, we also only had the one neighbor opposing the item in advance of that hearing. So again, consistent with part 4 of the test with regards to impacts on neighbors, we had one neighbor who said variance better, one neighbor who said they prefer nothing, but they were against the variance completely. And so staff had recommended for approval. However, and I'm going to apologize to the applicant's representative, because we just finalized public comment yesterday, did a re-review of everything late this morning, and I did not have an opportunity to reach out to the applicant to let them know about the updated staff recommendation. So I truly apologize for this being the first time you're seeing the adjusted recommendation. However, in light of the additional public comment that we did receive from neighbors in the area suggesting that the granting of a variance is somehow detrimental to the neighbors and to the neighborhood, staff is updated our recommendation to denial. Again, as a professional planner, I will just say, I think the addition done sensitively, done with some screening planting, has the potential to be less impactful for the neighbors. I also think that there is a real good opportunity there to not create this kind of secondary thing for the historic structure. But we do have part 4 of the test, and the neighborhood has clearly spoken and created a record relative to their concerns about the detrimental impact of this variance to the neighborhood. So with that, staff has updated our recommendation to denial for those reasons.
All right, thank you, Robert. And just for the record, is Mr. Rogi here this evening? No. Okay. And I did review his I reviewed his letter dated June 12th, and the first sentence of the second paragraph, just for the record, says, as the owner of 70 Smith Street, of which the courtyard of 56 Bull Street abuts, I want to state my preference for no addition. And he talks about the importance of the courtyard. So Again, I don't know that I would characterize that necessarily as a letter in support, but anyway, it is what it is. It's in the record, it speaks for itself.
And then, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. I also did want to mention, in addition to, the other, public comment that we received, not in opposition to this, there was a letter that we did receive from, and I want to make sure I get the right organization. I believe it was. Preservation Society, yes, but I want to just make sure I got the right organization. That they were in support of the variance, in acknowledgement of the concerns with the
Alternative.
alternative.
Okay, so do we have anybody here who wishes to speak in opposition to 56 Bull Street application? Okay, I see a few hands, but we'll go ahead and let the owner or applicant be present.
Thank you, Robert, for the project introduction. Good evening, board members. My name is Erin Lanier. I'm with Julia Martin Architects, and as Robert explained, we're requesting a variance to construct a small one-story addition at the rear of 56 Bull Street. Robert, is there a clip that I could use, or it shows?
There's a specific slide though that you'd like me to navigate to. Happy to.
Starting at the beginning.
Sure. Of your packet?
Yeah, and actually that first sheet of, or that second sheet rather, of photos would be fine. Thank you.
Okay.
So 56 Bull is a historic one-story residence near the intersection of Bull and Smith Streets, and these are some existing photos of the property, including the rear yard and the visibility from Smith Street. Unlike many typical arrangements downtown, where a rear yard abuts a rear yard of another property, and in this case, the rear yard is perpendicular to the piazza at 70 Smith Street and adjacent to the back building at 54 Bull Street. To the next slide. So the original portion of this structure was constructed around 1830 and then subsequently enlarged with two separate additions. The property was individually listed on the National Register in 1976 due to its association with noted abolitionist Denmark, BC. These are Sanborn maps, and we have overlaid those over the existing footprint to better illustrate the building's evolution, as well as some excerpts for the National Register listing. The addition we're proposing tonight would connect to the section of the house constructed after 1951 via a small hyphen, which preserves much of the rear elevation and allows for easy removal of the addition in the future if desired, in keeping with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation. Go to the next slide, please.
Maybe come.
All right. So this is the existing and proposed site plan, which I think gets to the heart of our variance. Our clients, the Mills family, purchased this property late last November after coming to Charleston for many years and falling in love with the city. They have two daughters that are 9 and 11 who serve competitively, and so they travel regularly all over the world for their competitions, but have all long wanted a home base here that they could come back to, and really have appreciated the charm and history of 56 Bull Street. They lived here for the month of December, but had to move out temporarily due to a 3-month rental that was booked under the previous owner. And during that time, they reached out to us about the possibility of adding a little bit more living space. This cottage has just over 900 square feet of interior space, which includes 2 small bathrooms and 3 small bedrooms. One thing the house lacks is a space for a table for 4 people to sit down and have dinner or do schoolwork. Though this may not have been terribly important in the past, as this home has always been a rental and more recently to college students, it's a pretty essential element to a family that a family would like to have. So our proposal is to convert one of the existing bedrooms at the rear into a dining room and office, and then sensitively attach to the rear to replace the bedroom they would be giving up. The house currently has 3 bedrooms, and we would still have 3 bedrooms. Our variance request is to allow this addition to attach to the existing structure and extend into the rear setback, which is a substantial 25 feet. The addition would comply with all of the requirements for lot coverage and meet the required side setbacks, but would be left with only 10'8" to the rear property line. It's worth noting that all 3 adjacent properties to 56 Bull are already legally non-conforming, with buildings and portions thereof located in the rear setback, practically abutting the respective rear property lines. If you'll go to the next slide.
Take a moment. Sorry.
So we've included the second site plan, not actually as an alternate proposal, but rather to help illustrate that what we're requesting a variance for is not significantly different from what the ordinance allows by right in terms of size and even location. For several reasons, we believe our proposal is more sensitive to the site, the neighbors, and in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, while also achieving the goal of additional living space for our clients. For those who haven't memorized the city's zoning ordinance, there is a special exception that allows for someone to build an accessory structure in their lot with less than 600 square feet and can be within 3 feet of the side and rear property lines. It must, however, be at least 70 feet away from the front property line and to the rear of the existing structure. This plan on the right illustrates what that would look like using the same program we want to achieve in our addition. We obviously do not want to build a separate bedroom in the backyard when our clients have 2 young daughters that would be sleeping in the main house. But because the 70-foot setback for the accessory structure and the 25-foot rear setback for an addition essentially coincide on the slide, the ordinance effectively permits the detached version, but not the preferred detached plan. Attaching this additional living space to the house is preferable for several reasons. It makes the most sense from a practical standpoint to make this house function as a true single-family home. It results in a greater setback at the rear, which is preferable to 70 Smith and more in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance. An attached addition would not be required to comply with flood zone requirements for the finished floor level, meaning the floor level would be 2 feet lower than a separate structure would have to be, resulting in a more deferential relationship to the existing house. An attached addition as proposed would not increase the bedroom count, but would effectively prevent an additional bedroom from being added to the lot in the future. We'll go to the next slide, please. These are the elevations, both our proposed request and the detached version, to illustrate why the variance requested is not substantially different in terms of footprint from what is permitted, but is significantly more desirable and in keeping with the Charleston vernacular in terms of how the home is used, wanting to be subordinate to the historic mass and lower in height as it relates to the neighbors and even from an architectural aesthetic standpoint. By contrast, the separate structure, which would not require any additional parking, special approvals, or anything like that, could not only increase the bedroom count on the lot, but would also decrease the functional garden space, and due to the higher finished floor level required of new structures, would be less deferential to the historic building and result in a greater mass at the roof line in order to achieve a minimum head height. So just to quickly go through the 4-prong test. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. The existing dwelling is a distinctive, well-preserved early 19th century cottage, and any addition to the site should be deferential to it, which is inherently more complex when the building is 1 story. The rear setback line and the accessory structure setback essentially coincide on this lot, creating a geometric conundrum wherein the same footprint and use would be permitted in essentially the same location if detached, but not allowed if attached. These conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. At 933 square feet, this dwelling is one of, if not the smallest in the neighborhood. Nearly all houses in the vicinity are 2 stories or more, which allows for a larger amount of living space relative to footprint and greater flexibility in adding to the rear. Additionally, the cottage is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which further impacts the importance that any new construction be diminutive and deferential to the existing structure in line with the Secretary of Interior standards. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Due to preservation concerns, adding living space to this diminutive historic dwelling is particularly difficult, despite the fact that the permitted lot coverage would support additional square footage. A fundamental element of sensitively adding on to a historic building is the use of a hyphen, a small connector that creates a light touch, preserves the existing footprint, and helps distinguish old from new. However, that connection inherently results in less efficient use of the space directly behind the home and within the setbacks, such that the addition extends further than would otherwise be practical. Without a variance, the only option available to these homeowners would be a detached addition, which would be awkward to utilize as part of a single-family house, require compliance with the city's current flood-related requirements, result in a taller structure with an eave height substantially higher than the historic eave height, even with the minimal interior finished height of 78, set the footprint much closer to the northern neighbor's property line, and furthermore would increase the potential and opportunity for a future owner to legally use the property in ways that are less appealing to the neighborhood. The authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. The character of the district will be protected and enhanced by accommodating this modest additional living space as a diminutive attached addition. This design solution will be deferential to the significant historic cottage, and the resulting living space will be more functional as a meaningful part of the single-family dwelling. Moreover, it will mitigate the impact on the property to the north, which is the setback in question. And it will also avoid frequent foot traffic between separate structures that could disturb the neighbors to the east or west. Furthermore, the attached addition, a traditional way of expanding and modifying homes in Charleston for centuries, would not intensify the bedroom count on the property, and in fact serves to prevent a separate structure from being built in the future, which legitimately could have negative impacts on the neighboring properties and the neighborhood as a whole. While we recognize that there are inevitably an impact to neighbors whenever a change occurs on a nearby property, and we respect everyone's desire for ample light and air, we do not believe that permitting this addition as proposed would have an impact that rises to the level of substantial detriment as stated in the fourth prong. The resulting condition is so similar to the vast majority of historic properties nearby, and in fact allows for more space between the new structure and nearby homes than is traditionally found between the piazzas of Charleston single houses and their immediate neighbors. We and our clients appreciate your time in considering this request. As with all projects, we have made a concerted effort to meet and work with city staff, the preservation groups, adjacent neighbors, and the neighborhood association to find mutually agreeable solutions. Though that may not always be possible, it is always our goal, as evidenced by the correspondence that has been provided, which includes a statement of support from the Preservation Society and a letter from the neighbor to the north, Mr. Rocky, expressing his preference for the attached addition over a detached addition. I'll also note that since the last hearing, we've met with the neighborhood association. We spent a good hour presenting this to them. They had previously provided a statement. They chose to remain neutral in this hearing. So I just wanted to make sure you have all of that.
That's Charleston Village. So their opposition has been withdrawn.
And that's my understanding, and I believe there's a member that was of that board here tonight, that is aware of that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lanier. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Yes, we've got a couple questions, I think, before we sit down. If you could stay up.
Oh,
there,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
So I just wanted to ask, I guess I'm a little bit confused, how, you know, what the hardship is or the variant, how it meets the variance test when you have 3 bedrooms and you're converting a bedroom into an office space or dining room space, but in order to build a bedroom in the back. I'm wondering, did you consider building an office? I mean, using the back space as an office? Because I know that y'all, I mean, I believe that you've mentioned a few times or in the different presentations about how awkward it would be to have the bedroom separate from the building. And that was one of your justifications for wanting it attached. So I was just wondering if y'all had considered the detached, like as an office space.
So the you know, I think a big part of this is not just office space, but the ability to sit at a table and eat together, to have a space for a table for 4 people, and, you know, to have connectivity. So by converting that to the dining space, you can walk through it without walking outside or walking through somebody's bedroom. And that's kind of, you know, to us makes the most sense. The reality too is that while there are 3 bedrooms in this house, these bedrooms are tiny. Imagine dividing 900 square feet into 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and the little bit of living space that's left over. So, you know, what they're trying to build within this footprint is within the lot coverage. It's, you know, it's not creating an exceptionally grand home by any state. But I think it is taking this property that has long been, you know, a rental property, in part because it's not terribly functional long-term for a family to use, and trying to make it more functional in that way.
Any other questions for Ms. Lanier while she's standing there? Okay, thank you very much. All right, anybody else who wishes to speak in support of the application for 56 Bull? All right, seeing no one else in support, we'll hear from those in opposition.
Good evening, my name is Ron Horn, I live at 54 Wall Street, I've lived there since 1989. I've been at nominee, extremely involved in the city, Charleston Village, and really pleased to live where I live. I'd like to address one of the criteria for the variance approval. The variance cannot be detrimental to the adjacent property or to the public good. I find the proposed variance, we have a irreparable potential of damage and impact to my property, my daily life, and my family's life. Presently, 67% of my house, there's a zero property line, but 67% of it is facing 56 Bull Street, either the side or the roof. If this proposal passes, 90% of my sight line will be destroyed, basically. I won't be able to see anything from any of my windows from upstairs or downstairs, especially downstairs, looking out at any of the windows. I don't know, about 10 feet in the far corner, on the very end of my house, where I won't be looking at their house. But the problem is on that far corner, there's Mr. Roby's house, and there are no windows on that side of it. We need to look at because the positioning of the two houses relative to mine, Mr. Ruggie beside me, on the back side of it, he will be less affected because of the positioning of the house. So that's a real issue for me. Also, at 58 Bull Street, there is a garage that's right on Smith Street that would block part of the separated proposal, the one that's been approved. Mr. Roby has also stated he is opposed to basically either option. So I don't know how strong his stance is about being against it. We both are mutually good friends and both have something about the whole situation. Sunlight is certainly important to me, as is to everyone. It increases the desirability of where you live. It makes life certainly more inviting, healthier, and a lot happier to live in. Without my light, I think that is a pretty hard pill to swallow. The way that my house is situated, like I said, with this variance, it would knock out any possibility of me looking out my windows. Also, I've had a couple of real estate professionals tell me the property value of my home would be decreased dramatically with this proposal. This variance is granted. The impact of construction of laying foundation, asphalt, cutting trees, removing landscaping, and certainly lead to drainage problems, which could affect me and Mr. Ruggie also, of course, but there's no guarantee that this proposed change of one bedroom to an office, or however they're saying they're going to do it, would be honored. There's absolutely none. I've been in Charleston for a while, and I've had all sorts of people promise my neighbors certain things, and they get the sale or whatever happens, and then it doesn't end up that way. I've just seen so many times. The previous living room was changed to a bedroom just to accommodate another rental space. So instead of having a living room in 56 Bull Street, they had a bedroom and a really nice bathroom, a living room, 2 bedrooms. It's advertised for 6 people with 3 large bedrooms and 2 large baths. On the internet for rental. Place has been rented except for the few times that I saw them in December. I've never seen them back there. It's been rented the whole time. I don't see that where those single family use things hasn't happened. They're in the first 3 months, but I haven't. That was a provocation from itself. It's they continue to rent the facility. I don't understand where the single family issue is so prevalent. It also seems to me that any change to Denmark BZA House is not aligned with Charleston's preservation history. I had a couple of people that wanted to be here. I heard Anthony Thompson is the minister across the street. And unfortunately, or fortunately for him, he's on a speaking tour. But he wanted me to restate that he and his congregation are opposed to the variance request. He stated a free man, he was a hero, resided there, so therefore to be protected as any other historic landmark. The entirety of his congregation signed a petition stating, since 1980, we've worked hard to keep our church as it originally was, and it is our hope that the Denmark BZA House will not be altered. We feel that as one of the few African-American sites still available in Charleston, an attached addition to this house would not be in the best interest of preserving history. A separate petition was signed by over 40 neighbors in Charleston Village. Now, Founder Brown of Go Tours says it's one of his most popular sites. And he says it's become a landmark and should remain as historic as possible. He too is against variance. We have another very impactful person here that'll be speaking later about Mr. Williams. We'll be talking to us in just a moment. So those are the things I think we should consider. The variance request is not only for the person requesting it, it's supposed to be also for the people who are affected. And I'm one of them, but I'm just one of a few. I have a whole bunch of neighbors that are want to preserve this site. It's not to be used simply to allow for a more profitable use of the property. The public interest really needs to be protected in this. One important factor in changing an historic structure is intended use. And so far, this intended use has been monetarily driven. As real estate experts, I know that the owners knew the size of the property when they bought it. There wasn't any big change. They didn't live there and decide something that was already made up when they first got there, because they told me first time I met them that they had used someone that was a good architect and was on a board or something like that, and they could make some changes. This was my first meeting, so I know this didn't just come up from exposure to the reality of living in that house. It seems to me more aligned with the expansion of a rental property, and or not. It's still, if you buy something, I think you have an idea of what's going on. The intent was stated to be a full-time resident, and then it changed to not being a full-time resident. And that's sort of, I don't know. The compliant option seems to serve as an ultimatum to the neighbors and so on. We get what we want, or this is what we're going to give you. But I don't think whatever the architects decide to do would not be a bad thing, because I know the architects are very capable and would have the Denmark BZA House in mind to make sure things work well together. I live in a treatment home myself. I've kept the structure intact. My upstairs has 2 bedrooms, a porch, and a bath. You go to the restroom, my son, throughout this whole time there, has to go through one of the bedrooms to go to the bathroom. I could have enclosed it possibly through the porch if I wanted to, but I didn't think that was the way you were supposed to do it. I wanted to keep this property in line with what the history was. I knew what it was when I bought it. I didn't have any problem. I knew exactly what I was getting. And I wanted to honor the history of this home. This stewardship idea is not being honored in this variance request. Neighborhoods are made up of people. And people around 56 Bull Street in Charleston Village, the ones that I've talked to, and every single one of them agreed they were against this proposal. This variance request, it doesn't have any it fails the hardship test. I don't understand the hardship of it's just increasing I haven't seen them as a family, and even if it was going to be a family, they knew what they were getting when they got there. It's detrimental to the adjacent property, mine and Mr. Roby's. It changes the footprint of this historic site, and it's also a detriment to the public good. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Mr. Morrison has a question for you.
Mr. Horn, you accept the possibility that if this variance is denied, this alternative will be built there, and there won't be anything you can do under law to stop it.
I understand that. I think.
What is the logic behind that? That's what I'm struggling with.
Well,
It's clearly gonna be taller, closer to you. Arguably not nearly as consistent with the site as a whole.
well, I don't know if it'd be taller.
Well, I mean, the one they're showing is taller. The eaves, the restrictions on the eaves of the addition are tighter.
By code, if the new structure has to meet the flood requirements
It's
as
got
a
to go,
hyphen,
yeah.
they could get by with a smaller.
But I mean, you and all the people opposed to this assure you don't believe, I guess, these people will actually, this owner will actually build that?
Well, I do.
And why? Okay,
I think the summer may not be here forever also, and as far as rental and so on, it doesn't increase the number of people that would be living there.
I'm just having trouble understanding it. You may be right about the variance standard. I hadn't made my mind up, but I just don't understand I don't feel like they are threatening an ultimatum to build this second option. I see them as clearly preferring and asking to do something less intrusive. But I just don't understand the neighborhood's desire to choose this alternative over the first proposal. I'm having trouble understanding that.
Well, I think one thing too, they want to protect the BZ house itself. And it wasn't a grand structure to start with.
And it might not even have ever been Denmark.
Well, that's the point but that is not the point.
I know,
I agree.
I know, it's on.
People need a place to go to, and it's part of the heritage. It's very important to many, many people. And so if that's not there, and it really doesn't matter to me. I don't know if it is or isn't, but I know that it's what people, it's on this.
I know, but you spent a lot of time on light and air. I heard you the first time you were up here and listened closely both times.
Yes, sir.
And you've talked a lot about your view being blocked, and I'm sympathetic to that. I don't know if that is a legal right, but I'm sympathetic anyway. I just don't understand. You may be the alternative you get may be worse than the one you're opposing. That's all. I just don't understand that.
Well, I think Ms. Mills's reputation as a good architect. I'd be okay with what she feels, and so with Mr. Roby, that's what it comes down to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Horn. Any other questions while he's here? Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Sir, please state.
I'm Franklin Williams.
Yes, sir.
I live at 5158 East Wayne Street. I live in North Charleston. I'm in support of the community to block this ordinance, primarily because of the industry that I'm in. I'm a tour guide. I tell stories. The neighborhood allows me to come in their neighborhood and share the story about Denmark VZ and how he survived and how he was, how can I say, I don't even know how to put it the way Denmark VZ was treated. I don't know if the city treated him like a hero or a villain. There's a statue of Denmark VZ in Hampton Park. His house is 56 Bull Street, you know. The biggest issue that I'm listening to and hearing about this issue right here is still about capitalism. This variance, if it goes through, regardless of the situation of how it's going to be built or constructed, it's going to put a hardship on somebody that's been in this neighborhood for how long you been in there? Because I know I've been coming through there for 10 years. And the thing about Charleston Village, AKA Charleston Green, it's already tight. The whole community has been commercialized, which predominantly holds students. To add the variance, that's probably one of the things that's going to happen to the nice little cottage that's going to be constructed in the back of that home. Going to become another part of the College of Charleston dorm. But this is something I tried to share the last meeting that I couldn't make it to. Said I'm writing this to concern my opposition regarding the variance request for the proposed rear addition of detached bedroom suite. Got 3 bedrooms in that house. And you want to put a detached suite on, I couldn't remember the square footage that you're working with, at 56 Bull Street on a historic piece of property in Charleston, South Carolina. 3.5 centuries it's been here. There's more history on this 4 square mile peninsula than a little bit. And capitalism is eating it up. The stories that we've been learning when we were in school, it's getting swallowed up in this town because of capitalism. Buy a home, renovate it. What used to be a handful of thousands, now you're looking at millions of dollars. And you're ruining the lifestyle that other people have in these neighborhoods. Even though recent research suggests that the house may not have been Denmark VZ's actual home, the site is still historically significant. That's where I come in at. I mean, I know I'm a storyteller. I mean, I'm nobody. But I love this town. I love this city. You know, May came to Charleston, South Carolina in 1993. Part-time driving a bus. Listening to storytellers try to share the history of this town. And I ask my guests to ask me questions. And when they see things like new construction, and they ask me about the Preservation Society and the Board of Architecture and Review, is this legal? I'm going like, no, you're not supposed to tear anything down. You're supposed to use the original bone structure. But that doesn't look colonial back there. Well, I'm not talking about what's back there. I'm talking about what's right here in front. But guests notice those things when you add those additions to it. And they want to know why is this here? Why is this changing the structure of the history of this city? It said the current owners, which I do not know, they've never used this property as a family home. 10-year tour in Charleston, South Carolina, that's one of the things I've recognized. I've never seen the family. I've always seen students on that property. You know, studying for the dorms, hanging out on the front porch, sunbathing, you know. But they said that they want to add, it's been, excuse me, it's been students housing and a proposed addition seems to be part of a larger investment plan, not a personal or preservation mind improvement. This raises serious questions about whether the variance truly serves the public good or just boasts profitability. It's all about profit. Let's continue to destroy the historic property in this town, whether it's black or white. Continue to just build on top of graves. Continue to just add on to structure that's been here since the 1800s. And that storytellers to do the best they can. It is under the section, if I got it right, I think it's 54(9)24, a variance isn't supposed to be granted just because it would make a property more profitable. Profit is not a valid reason. More important, this change could hurt the surrounding properties and the historic feel of the neighborhood. Even if the addition is technically smaller or subordinate, the message it sends that protect historic homes can be altered for investors' gain. That's harmful. That's frankly speaking. It says, what's at stake here is more than one building. It's about preserving the integrity of our city history and neighborhoods. Once these kinds of changes are allowed, it becomes harder to say no to the next one and the next one. And this thing, you know, we'll be just like everybody else, a town. I love this historic city. I brag about it every single day. And I want to continue to see, you know, I don't have a problem with gentrification, because to me, gentrification is like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig, but the stories are still here. And that's what I have to say about the proposal that you're trying to make here with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Y'all probably tired of hearing all this stuff. But thank you for hearing it. And thank you for going through this process of coming back and giving the community an opportunity, and the fact that, as I understand it, the vote last time was unanimous to do that. That's important, and thank you for that. You know,
could you please state your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Phil Noble, and I live at 32 Bull Street, about 4 houses down from the Denmark BZA house. And I have sort of been occasionally called the mayor of Bull Street, because I've been there 45 years, longer than anybody else. How we got here was the community thought it was going to be a single family house. We believed what we were told, it was going to be a single family house. And the community said, fine, we love it. But we found out that wasn't true. We found out we were deceived. We found out that it was not, in essence, a single family house, but a rental unit. In a rental unit, to increase the income of an individual who I'm sure is a fine person, but he has deceived his neighborhood about what he wanted to do. And the neighborhood responded. And the neighborhood responded with 71 people said, no, we don't want that. We don't want that in our community. 71 people said no. And the owner here, he's a real estate guy. What he does for a living, he's the king of real estate of Myrtle Beach. He knows the rules of real estate. He bought it knowing the rules, knowing what was allowed, knowing what was provided by the law. But after having deceived us, he said, no, I want to do something else. I want to do something else. His family could still live there. Despite it all, we'd love to have them. But we want more than anything to preserve our neighborhood and to preserve the trust that is a part of any neighborhood. Every neighborhood exists physically and it exists on trust. Do we trust our neighbors? And we trust our neighbors. We work very hard over time to do that. And to advertise a family home is up for rental for, I think the last number I saw was $6,000 a month. That's not what we want. That's not what we were told. That's not what we believe. And that's not what we trust. Ron is a vital part of that neighborhood. His house, his tenureship on that block. And we want to protect that. The house is so valuable to us as it is, as a historic dwelling and what that represents. That is so important to us. And we as a neighborhood, our neighborhood is important to us. And the level of trust and commitment we have to each other is what we want to preserve, not just for one building, but preserve for our neighborhood. And so I would respectfully ask you to again unanimously reject this appeal that is so opposed by the neighborhood, opposed by everybody involved, and opposed to the concept of violating the trust of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noble. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition?
I got a question for
Yep.
my friend Phil. How do you know that it's not through the most recent rental there is a result of a prior commitment by the seller of the home, which is what we've heard a couple of times from the applicant? That is their explanation for the ongoing rental up to now. Your side seems to believe that all this application is not for the purpose of making the house able to accommodate a family, but instead to increase its value as a rental. The family's telling us they want to use the house as a family. I'm just trying to figure out how we are supposed to resolve that. What?
It's real simple. Is the house for rent? If I'm gonna live there, I wouldn't rent my house.
Well,
If there's a prior commitment for 30 days, that's fine. But the house, last I looked, was for rent.
How long has it been a rental before it changed hands?
Forever.
A long time.
So y'all are prepared to
But-
accept the house as it is if it stays a rental because the family may decide it's not big enough to accommodate them. So you may be inviting a forever rental with your position, and you may be inviting that that alternative building as well, which under your theory might turn into more of a rental. I'm just trying to, there's so many issues here. I'm trying to figure out. I'm not willing just to decide that the applicant is deceiving us by suggesting they want to live in the house as a family. I don't know what to do about that part of this thing.
Well, I don't know either, Al, other than to accept this is what they said they were going to do. They intended to live there. That's what they said.
But they could buy the house whether they intended to rent it or live.
I understand that, but they told us, they told you, they told the neighborhood that we intend to move here full time. Full time doesn't mean I'm gonna rent it next week, next month, next year. I'm gonna let it be rented forever and ever. I'm gonna live in this house. If you're gonna live in this house, you're gonna live in this house and you're not gonna rent it.
But you can't hold them to that, and y'all may be working toward full-time permanent rental with more space and more tenants is what baffles me.
I agree with you, Mr. Morrison. Mr. Noble, my question for you, and I think it's maybe kind of phrase it slightly differently. It seems like the opposition to the hyphen makes it even more difficult for the house to successfully serve as a single-family residence in the future. Is that a fair statement?
Say that again.
If you oppose the addition and the hyphen attached to the building, would that not make it more difficult for the house to be successful as a single-family residence at some point in the future? Let's say these current owners decide maybe it is too small, and they decide to sell it to someone else. If they have now created that additional bedroom as a separate addition, completely independent, that still doesn't function well as a single-family residence. But if they were to have that bedroom attached as part of the main building, it would, I would think, function and be more marketable as a residential property, not as a long-term or short-term rental. Is that correct?
I'm not a real estate guy, and I can't predict what will happen or what the market will be. I do know that if you have a facility, a building that you say is what's going to be your home, and then you say that in a way that deceives the community. And when the community learns the truth, the community reacts. Then the community has said, if you want to move here as a single family home, wonderful. We want you to be here. But if you're going to, if this is going to be a rental, we don't want that. Now, understand that we may not be able to prevent the other structure in the back. So be it. We'll go lobby city council or something. But the point is that a single family home is a very different beast than a rental, be it short-term, 29 days or 31 days or elsewhere. And we welcome neighbors. We welcome neighbors. But we don't want neighbors to deceive us and then try to take what they knew. They knew what the size was. If you thought it was too small, don't buy it. It didn't shrink.
I just wanted to address my board members just real quickly from my perspective, we're dealing with the issue of, is there a hardship to grant a variance?
Yeah.
And I completely respect all the comments from the neighbors concerned about it being a rental, continuing to be a rental unit. But I feel like our focus really should be is the applicant proving that there's a hardship to grant a variance? But I would like to add that when the owner did speak, he did say that they do not live here. They have a full-time home, maybe somewhere else in South Carolina, but that they do travel extensively all year, which gave me the impression that they wouldn't live here full-time. And honestly, that's not anything that I'm considering right now. I'm just stating that as something that I remember hearing. I'm trying to focus on, is there a hardship that meets the variance test? I mean, with all due respect.
Let's discuss that.
Yeah,
Let's
you're right.
discuss it. Let's discuss it how after we hear from all the opposition. I'd like to hear from the applicant again in rebuttal. So let's let the process
Mr. Noble, I got one more question that seems to be some disagreement about whether the Charleston Village Association's position submitted by Wiley Decker of 44 Rutledge, who wrote a long opposition. And then we heard that maybe Charleston Village doesn't oppose now. Does the city know? Does anybody know the answer to that question? Whether the HVA formally or otherwise opposes or doesn't oppose this?
Can I speak to that as best I know?
Right. He met with us and was not withdrawing his.
The president met with us, advised us on the principles and strategies that he thought were appropriate.
Mr. Becker, y'all met with or somebody else?
And he said we could certainly reuse that letter if need be.
Yeah,
And as far as the timeline, I mentioned that Mr. Mills bought the property in November, and he did have 3 months that he was obligated to continue renting it because of prior commitments from the previous owner, and he honored that. But after that, on his own, he's continued to rent it.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Anybody else wish to speak in opposition? Mr. Adrian, are you gonna educate us on some point? Okay.
Question. I think. Don't you have an application after this one?
I do. This is Joel Adrian, 188 Wentworth, Charleston Village. And I don't believe I'm a full acting member because I haven't done the blood test and the handshake and other things. But I was part of the meeting, the Zoom meeting we had with Julia Martin and her associate, as they explained the application before me. I have had communication from Wiley Becker and Joshua Hughes, and basically it's thanks for all the thoughtful input from everyone. It sounds like there's a consensus to maintain our current position and let the BZA process play out without further HBA comment. And I would say that not as a Charleston Village Association member, but as a resident of Charleston Village, what I've heard, if I was the capitalist, I would build the separate structure, put a kitchen in it, and I'd have 2 rentals on one piece of property, and you'd be seeing $9,000 a month flow through that one space. So I think that as a resident, the addition is much more sensitive. I do believe that when you have approval from, or support, I should say, from the Preservation Society and the other bodies that are in charge of the architecture, they wouldn't do that if they didn't feel it preserved the history that's there and then allowed for the expansion. That's it. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adrian. Now we'll hear from Ms. Lanier.
I'll just take a moment to clarify a couple of things.
And I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but if you could please speak in the microphone.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
If anybody's interested, I just have a copy of the email that we sent to Mr. Rogge on the 12th of September, asking if his previous BZA-Z statement was still okay to present to you all. And I'm happy to pass this around. He essentially reiterated what he had previously said, which I agree is not support for what we're asking for, but does state a preference for the variance versus a separate structure.
Yeah, we got it. Thank you.
To give you a little background on the discussions that we've had with everybody. Prior to this ever being submitted to the BZA-Z, we met with city staff, we met with the preservation groups, and we met with the 2 neighbors that we felt were most impacted, Mr. Rogge and Mr. Horn. At our initial discussions with those 2 people, we were under the impression that our clients intended to live there full time. When we conveyed to our clients that Mr. Horn's in particular's concern was that that was not the case, our client clarified to us that that is in fact not the case. They do not intend to live there 365 days a year because of their travel schedule. We corrected our statement to both Mr. Rogge and to Mr. Horn, and we sent a letter to the city also correcting that statement, which they assured us was submitted or was posted, was the only statement that was posted for the public. We never had any discussions with the neighborhood association or anybody other than those 2 people that would be under any idea at any point that we were indicating that our clients intended to live there full time. So I just wanted to be clear that there was no deceit of an entire neighborhood of people. I cannot speak to the reasons that Mr. Horn decided to appeal our original thing. You know, it's clear, I think, from his original statement provided that he was under no assumption that our clients intended to live there full time, even at that point. That being said, the letter or the petition that was circulated throughout the neighborhood listed a series of statements that are simply not true. And I don't blame the people that signed that because it sounds terrible, but that is very different from 71 people or however many it is reviewing the drawings and understanding the concept of what we're presenting tonight. I think those are two very different things. I recognize that Mr. Horn has lived in this neighborhood for a very long time and has a lot of supporters, and that is perfectly fine, and I understand how he feels about this impacting his property. The variance test does not establish that you have to win a popularity contest in the neighborhood, nor does it establish that every neighbor that's adjacent to you has to agree with what you're choosing to do. It simply establishes a four-prong test, which I believe we have highlighted and clarified and that we meet. That's ultimately your call to make. But I worked with VAR for 5 years, and Julia served on the VAR for almost 10. So I can assure you that the utmost important thing to us is the preservation of historic structures. There's nothing else about this job that is, pulling us into this drama, which we would really prefer to not do. So I just want to, I think, clarify those items, and if there's anything else I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Ms. Lanier. All right. Any other questions? I'm sure maybe some discussion.
Okay. Is it true or not true that the designation as an historic structure subjects it to a higher scrutiny for the variance test, or does the variance test remain the same?
Variance test remains the same.
And does the variance test remain the same whether the structure is going to be used for rental or residential?
Correct, it remains the same.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just cross-examining.
Here's a harder question. Why did the city change its position from support to opposition? Is it because of the numbers of people in the neighborhood signing the petition, or something else?
So as I had mentioned during my staff presentation, yes, so our initial support for this item when it was originally brought forth was when we had public comment only from essentially two people, as the applicant's representative kind of pointed to. We had the original email from Mr.
Rogge and Mr. Horn.
Rogge and Mr. Horn.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was, to some degree, you could almost cancel each other out. And we looked at it and it looked like, while yes, the letter of the code is that the addition is an intrusion into the rear setback, it seemed like the addition was more in keeping with the intent of a rear setback, which is to put separate the living of one family from another family, and provide, some of that space and distance for quiet enjoyment of property. However, in light of the meeting and then all the additional comment that was provided, when you get to just test 4, and while I completely agree with the applicant's representative, it's not a popularity contest, but when you do have that much response out of it that says that are from the neighbors in the neighborhood that this is not something that they feel like is good for the neighborhood and that is detrimental. Then staff adjusted our position to a denial. It really was a late today thing, like we were going back and forth on that. Because again, as a professional, without that neighborhood response that we've received, we would still be, from a zoning perspective, we would still be, and as a planner, I would still be in support of the variance because I think it's the least intrusive application of an addition to this property. That said, it will still go to the BAR. Whatever gets built here will still go to the BAR, and they'll have some thoughts on addressing that historic, the element of ensuring that it meets our historic preservation ideals with regard to additions. Again, it is important to note, just because a property is designated historic, it doesn't mean it can never be touched for all time. It means that when it is touched, that touch, as mentioned, should be light, it should be deferential, and that, but the Secretary of the Interior standards, as well as most guidance on historic preservation, acknowledges that, historic properties are going to evolve just like anything else, and have, modernization occur to some degree. So. But yes, that it's just the degree to which we got opposition from neighborhood groups and members that said it would be detrimental to the neighborhood. And so prong 4 of the
You think
test.
they're thinking expanded rental will be detrimental to the neighborhood, or something else will be detrimental to the neighborhood?
I mean, yeah, I just, at this point, they've said that they think it's detrimental. I mean, I know we've heard a lot about that stuff.
The
but
applicant has said that the petition misrepresents something and that people were worked up because of misrepresentation. So the city probably hadn't delved into it that deeply. They just accepted the opposition, whatever it was based on as opposition.
We received the public comment. It said they're opposed to the variance request for the property.
You don't go behind that.
Not unless there's some evidence to suggest that there has been some intentional misleading of the public as to what they were opposing.
And I believe when we heard and read a lot of the comments during the last meeting and heard a lot of the comments from the community that live in that area, it seems like some of them were concerned about the intensification of the use of that property. So creating additional living space being something that they might have been opposed to as well. So
I just think, the timing of more public awareness was just terrible, but I don't think y'all had any intent to try to deceive the community. I think y'all did everything right from the design professionals. It was just timing of when the community found out what they found out and how they perceived what is taking place. So I just, I want y'all to know, I don't think y'all did anything
We
inappropriate.
certainly, if the intention was to increase the rental capacity, we wouldn't be here. We would just will do what we by right, and that would be the smarter financially.
Yeah. It was just bad timing for the community to get involved.
And do y'all feel that the other elements of the variance test have been met? 1, 2, and 3?
that was gonna be one of my questions to Robert, is if there weren't, how does it meet the variance test if now section 4 or the 4th prong test isn't met? How did you feel like it did meet the variance test initially when you approved? I didn't know if that was an appropriate question, but I think that's to Robin's question.
So we did look at it, and again, so this property is in many ways kind of a different situation than other properties in that many of the other properties that are of similar size have a much more significant footprint on the site in terms of living area. They're 2 stories. They don't have the designation as a National Historic Registry property, which does in fact, create some limitations on modification. Maybe a little contrary to what I just said a moment ago, that designation does put some parameters, some additional parameters around what you can ultimately do with those properties, not necessarily specific to this board, but in other ways that we regulate such properties. It can create some additional parameters that a otherwise similarly situated property would not have to deal with. That does create to some degree a hardship. So for instance, this property, even though the Heights District would allow additional stories, this property could never get approved for additional stories. Well, I guess maybe for the lawyers in the room, I should never say never, but the likelihood is very strongly against the idea that this property could ever like go up in stories. We see that all the time though in other historic neighborhoods where they do build on and up in the back of the property where maybe it was a small bungalow and now in the rear they're adding a 2-story addition, maintaining some of the historic character of the front of the cottage. But, because the Heights District and the zoning would otherwise allow, and all the purview is demolition purview of historic materials. In this case, because it is a nationally registered property, like the legitimate opportunities for providing additional living space on a property of this size, when comparable properties in the neighborhood have much more living space, is very small. It is either to do this addition that could be otherwise done within the parameters of the zoning code, or the proposed addition with the variance. So in our initial review, we did see that they had a hardship as to the nature of the lot. Again, normally that nature of the lot is more about the topography, but in this case, it was sort of looking at that designation really does constrain where on the lot or how on the lot you might be able to do any additional living space. Let's see. Again, test 3 is still a viable use of the property, but again, looking at it as a because we did get the initial letter, and we originally, when we were reading it like, if a family were to live here full time based on the current layout, yeah, it did feel a little disconnected. Like there was no place to sit down to eat dinner. Like your dinner is, TV trays in the living room, if you, particularly for a family of 4, as was represented in the application. Again, to the point about, does it matter if the family is living there full time or if it's rental? No. If this is a rental property, having an opportunity for a family to actually have space where they could sit down to dinner and still have sufficient bedrooms to satisfy the needs of a family seemed like a reasonable request for the full utilization of the property. So was everything as black and white as we would love it for various tests to be? No, but from a staff perspective, there was enough gray space in the first 3 prongs of the test originally for us to recommend approval. And like I said, originally, we did not have all of the public comment that we've had to suggest that there is concerns for impact to the neighborhood. And so that, again, that's why we did make our shift, was because of that. Otherwise, we would still be, again, supporting the application, I believe.
Well, I'm wondering though, I know that this one's individually listed on the National Register, but I'm assuming that that entire district is on the National Register. Is that?
So this is in the Old Historic District.
Right.
So it is, yeah, so this is an area where we, have the surveys, category 1s, 2, 3s, 4s. I don't know that we have a district designation on the National Register for it. Actually,
That's where I'm going.
I will look at our actual preservation. I mean, again, as was mentioned, you know, these ladies are preservation experts in the field, so I would.
It's irrelevant.
Well, what I would like to add though is that I feel like it would, regardless, any of those properties would contribute to the historic district. So it
Yes.
seems like they
Yes.
would all fall within that. So it doesn't really make it that unique, I guess is my point. It does, but
I see where you're going.
it actually seems like all of them would contribute to the district.
So they would have a categorization, and so that categorization would determine the degree to which they contribute and to the degree to which that additional scrutiny that we would normally apply on a request. So again, there's gray space in that one where I think because of it's not a category 1 or 2, there's a lot more leeway in terms of judging its contribution to the district.
Thank you.
And I heard go ahead.
I was gonna say there's also 4 parts, there's four classifications for being listed and it could be a combination of 1, 2, or 3, or even 4 elements that would get you individually listed. So architecture being one of them, cultural events, and there are different reasons for why it might be listed, not strictly based on architecture, which is usually what people assume associate. You know that, I'm not. I'm trying to tell you something you don't know.
Well, I'm not, I have worked on some.
Yeah.
Hal, I heard your comments and your questions and particularly relating to the rights that they have. I guess, and I'm not suggesting that you all have put the board in this position, but it's almost like a lesser of two evils analysis. And
Well, I think we got to vote on the straight variance question.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Because otherwise.
Yeah, we
You're
can't-
actually
we
encouraging
right.
people to come and say, well.
I agree with that. I agree with that completely. I just wonder if all the neighbors know what they're asking for and are prepared to get what they're asking for, because I guess they assume they can stop the additional building somewhere else next time.
I just think we have to look at it the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm personally, this is just me. And I don't know what the city would think about this or y'all, but I get hung up on buying a property, Mr. Noble's point, the house didn't shrink, they knew what they were buying. So they bought this home assuming they could get a variance to get an addition put on. And then they say for a single family residence, the house we bought is just too tight, and I don't doubt that. I'm sympathetic with that. But it's unclear to me how much they're gonna ever use it as a single family residence. It seems logical, Mr. Bennett brought this up, that if it were usable, more usable as a single family residence, it would increase the chances that they would use it as a single family residence. But they bought into a property and they knew what they were buying. And if the neighbors don't want them to have the addition, they have this alternative. And I don't see how you can buy into a hardship and claim you have a hardship when you knew you were buying a hardship. I don't see how to support that. That's just my distilled down thought.
And any further discussion?
I might be on an island, and that's okay. I feel as though, and it's as Mr. Somerville pointed out, there's certainly some gray. I think from my position, I do see that there is potentially a detriment, but I don't think it is substantial. I think that having an 11.5 foot eve height is reasonable, and I think it's probably, well, maybe not preferable by the neighbor standard. I don't see the alternative as a threat so much as this is a solution that solves a lot of problems by lowering that eave height almost 4.5 feet less. So for that reason, I think I might be alone, but I think it meets the hardship.
I completely agree with you on the eve height. I just think when we've got this much of a dispute, we've got to stick strictly by the law. And they're gonna get what they want, whatever it is. Therefore, I'll make a motion to deny the variance.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny the variance by Mr. Morrison. Is there a second? Ms. Grass seconds the motion. We're now voting on denial of the variance. So an aye vote is for denial. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Mr. Bennett is opposed. The variance is denied by a vote of 5-1. Thank you very much. All right, the final item on our agenda. B5, 35 Spring Street, Cannonboro, Elliottboro, Council District 4, TMS number 460-08-04-005, Zone GB. Requesting a variance from section 54-301 to exceed allowable lot occupancy 40.7 existing, 53.8% proposed, 50% allowed for a rear pool house and request special exception under section 54-110F to extend a non-conforming west side setback of 7 feet 2 inches, 9 feet are required to enclose a first floor recess. The owner is Harrison Malpass. The applicant is Coastal Creek Design, Joel Adrian. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this property is here on Spring Street, approximately mid-block between King and St. Phillips. In this GB zone. You can see here in the aerial, the community that surrounds this property. Slightly different angle, kind of looking at it from the front. As with many properties, particularly in the immediately off of King Street area, you have a property where you have a residence behind a commercial frontage. So very much in keeping with the many of our higher capacity streets like Spring Street. You can see here the survey that just again shows the commercial application towards the front and the residential structure and then the rest of the lot. Here you can see the existing lot coverage as of today. I'm going to do a little zoom because I think that's hard to see. It's a 1-story commercial building, and then you have a 2-story residential structure that's behind it. And so the areas that we're talking about for the special exception, and you're going to see this better in the photos that Mr. Adrian supplied. But it's really just, there's a odd little recess here that looks like at some point, maybe it was a porch, maybe it was some kind of entry that was off of the drive or not even really wide enough to be a driveway, like just a service area essentially that amounts to the separation between these 2 buildings. And so the applicant is requesting to extend. It's weird. Normally we have an extension that's going up. This is an extension of that going down or going to the side to kind of allow for the filling in of that recess. And then the second part of the request is they're proposing to do an accessory structure. I think they're calling it a pool house. pool, pool something. Not quite sure that I call it. Anyway, they're doing a new structure to the rear of the house that would support a new pool that they would be adding to this rear yard as a part of their making this home or this property reoccupied. It currently is not, I don't believe occupied. I believe that it's been unoccupied actually for quite a while. Just as again, all of our good architect friends give us, even though this is BZA-Z, they give us all these great maps and Sanborn and timelines and histories. I think this is actually the 2016 picture is a really good picture of the commercial has actually been active more recently than the residential behind it. And so the proposal would be to reactivate the commercial. I think they're currently labeling for a restaurant while bringing the house back into productive use as a residence. And so they're proposing some upfitting of that to do that. This is the area, if you can see my cursor moving very slowly on the screens. This area here is where they would be filling in the recess on that first floor. Here you can kind of see the cutout there. Then the second floor, again, is just modernizing and bringing that all back up to code and livability, roofing, And then you can see the exterior. I love that whoever he had working the images to the line art actually included the red X for no internal operations by our fire department, as well as the graffiti that is on windows. That's some high level detail there. So they just bring the street frontage back into use. To the rear, though, they would make this more of an external living space as compared to how it's been previously used, with again kind of filling in the, is this the side with the gap? Filling in the gap there, and then you can see kind of some of the images. Right here is the gap that the recess, is our city architect informed us that would be called. That would be being filled in, and you can see that it has had some fantastic artwork installed presently that they would be removing. And then you have this outside accessory structure that they would be proposing that they're calling the pool house. The pool house does result in a lot coverage issue. This is GB, so they do have they don't have a setback issue, but they do have, similar to an earlier item, they do have a setback issue because of
lot coverage or setback.
I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Lot coverage issue. They do not have a setback issue, even though this is to the completely the rear of the property. The applicant has done an analysis of the block and shown the various lot coverages for the properties that front both on Spring Street and King Street. As you can see on here, everything that's got a red percentage is over the 50% threshold. So it is not inconsistent with other properties on this block to see development that has produced lot coverages in excess of the 50%. Again, it is important to note that the zoning came much later than the way this lot was broken up and subdivided and used. So, you know, when they applied our current development standards that are encapsulated in the zoning, you know, it's a one size kind of fits all, and not all of our historic lots necessarily fit that. In this case, the lot did meet the 50% threshold at what, 41, I think it is, or well, just under 41. And then they're proposing with their improvements to bring that up to 53.8%. We do not have any relevant case history on this. As happens very often, staff is recommending approval of the special exception. However, we could not find while we do acknowledge that the proposal is GB, which is an intense zoning district. This is an intense block. The lot coverage, we just couldn't find for the hardship in order to, because obviously the property will clearly be able to continue to be used as for residents. It's previously been, and we could not find for the hardship for the pool house.
All right, thank you, Robert. Anybody here in opposition to the request at 35 Spring Street? That's the note in opposition. Mr. Adrian, would you like to present?
Joel Adrian, 01 Branston Court, Suite 100, Mount Pleasant, Coastal Creek Design. And I'm apologizing for the voice. This is what happens when you make the decision to do your studies at Clemson, which then aligns you with that football team the rest of your life. And then you just watch them perform at the standard. But with business here, I think Robert did do a nice job of explaining what we're looking to do. So as you can see from some of the photos that were provided, the building is currently not being used except by I think there's a couple squatters on the second floor, and somehow I figured out a way in. But there's the desire to resurrect the structure, to reconstruct, and then to do a small little porch off the rear, and then put in a pool in the pool house. And the house, the property is zoned short-term rental. That is what the residential use most likely will be, just so everybody understands. And then we've got the commercial or restaurant use on the first floor is what would be proposed. If we could go to the slide that just shows, I guess, the floor plans of the first floor. We'll handle the special exception first, which hopefully is pretty simple because the wall and the roof line is there. This is the area that we're talking about right here. This little rectangle on the second floor continues straight across, so that the vertical height of this non-conforming side yard exists as tall as it's ever going to be. And so what we're looking to do is see if we can take this wall and just push it out in line with the exterior wall so we can capture that square footage for the first floor of the residential use. And then if we go to maybe the site plan, I think. So hardship test. Let me back up. I think you don't have to go to the history sheets, but the history sheets, I do think, answered Robert's question that there used to be a nice piazza that ran down the side of this structure that was infilled when the addition was added to the front, which was the commercial use. And then I don't know at what point the floor system of this porch was knocked out and it's now used for trash can storage. But with the idea of residential, whether it's short-term, long-term, or personal use, the pool and the pool house in the back, is what is generating 3.8% overage of the 50% allowed lot coverage. I think that go to that capitalist argument, severe detriment to the property. Pools is very important in the capitalist world. But if we go back to that very last sheet, I think this is really the tell-all, which is showing the area that's there and then saying, is there a detriment to the neighborhood, to the block? And there certainly isn't. And the size of our property, 35 versus 37 versus 39, when you look at the length and the depth of these, which is why their percentage is under, you get back to the ones that are more closely in line with our property and they exceed. So I'm not saying what's good for the goose, good for the gander, but I don't see that there is any detriment to the approval of the request to be 3.8% over.
Goose and gander is okay. That works here sometimes.
Okay,
Say
so
that.
But with that, I think I'll just answer any questions that y'all might have.
Okay, so the special exception, we all feel pretty comfortable with. The city recommends approval on that. The variance, in the four-part test, we've got a 3.5% proposed overage on that, and
So would the city not oppose the variance if it was 50% rather than 53.8?
If it was 50%, there wouldn't be a variance. It
Wouldn't be a
would just
variance.
be, they'd be able to build the accessory structure.
have you tried to design it without the variance or not?
So if you go to that plan, this is perfect. So it's its use, its function. So if I've got to get that 3%, 3.8% out, it's a significant reduction in what you're seeing here as a very small plan. I think it's 11 by 22. Looking at taking out a good chunk, 6-7 feet out of that, and
So your pool house has to be smaller, is that a hardship?
pool house has to be smaller.
Is that a hardship?
It's an economic hardship.
Well, I mean, the
Unfortunately,
real
Fred, I don't
question, Mr. Adrian, is
Consider.
you telling us you cannot compress that pool house to avoid this variance request?
Oh, I'm not.
I think that's the question.
Mr. Adrian, I don't think we can consider the financial hardship aspect of
That they
the
get
size of
as
the pool house.
unreasonably restricts the utilization. I think that there is economics involved in that, but to answer Mr. Morris's question, it's the give and take, and so what we have is I think a small structure that sits in the very back of this property. Asking for 3.8% versus what's around it is minor in scope and request, and if I have to take 5 feet out of that, then something's going.
Okay.
The porches, they don't, do they count or they don't count in total lot coverage?
They do.
They do.
So you got a porch at the front.
Going behind its lot coverage numbers.
Basically, anything with a structure on it, which is going to be anything that's built above grade.
I think it says 3 feet. 3 feet out of the ground is considered structure.
Keep hearing that, but when I look at the definition of structure, it doesn't talk anything about
Really?
3 feet. Gotta check in with Lee and figure out where that one is written down.
Is that based on the eave with the additional 1 foot overhang, or is that based on the footprint?
It's based on the. I don't know, we have some additional language about eaves, so I'd have to double check that one against the code.
Seems like an
So
opportunity
in
to sharpen
view
the
of
pencil.
late hour, if there are no more serious questions, I would like to suggest that even though it generally goes against my instincts to approve a variance for a pool house, this is a minor incursion. There is not a neighbor problem that this bigger pool house is going to bother at all, so far as I can tell. And I move we approve the variance.
Okay, so may I suggest as your chair, can we go ahead and just vote on the special exception first
Yes.
and knock that out of the way? So would you make a motion to approve the special exception?
Move approve.
Okay, all right, second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The special exception passes. Now let's make your motion on the variance.
I move approval of the variance in this one situation where I don't think it's gonna bother anybody in the world. And it's a minor incursion into the percentage.
All right. So Mr. Morrison moves to approve the variance. Is there a second? Going once, going twice. No second. All right. Is there another motion?
No pool owners on this thing.
I'll move to denial of the variance.
All right, motion to deny the variance by Mr. Bennett, seconded by Mrs. Grass. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Hey.
Opposed? Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, does not vote in favor of the motion to deny, but everybody else does. So by 5-1 margin, the variance is denied. Special exception is granted. Thank you very much, Mr. Adrian. Sorry your client will have to live with a slightly smaller pool left.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Been
We're adjourned.
bugging me, is this olive down here?
So.
I thought it was
Joel?
great.
Bill, how you doing?
Saying
Right?
Coastal Creek needs to come with a serious fruit
Thank you
basket.
for listening.